I think we are ready to begin. I hope you're all sitting comfortably with your cup of tea or your cup of coffee and anything else that you need to remain comfortable. And we will begin. Right, now, to have a sustainable environment, we must first understand what is sustainability. Now, we know that sustainability is the latest buzzword, but is it just a new buzzword? What does it mean? I'm going to give you a second or two, or longer if you like, for you to just have a think about what does sustainability mean to you? And I'm sure you're going to say or think about recycling, but is it just about recycling? Is it more? Let's have a look, or I'll give you that moment just to have a little think. Now let's have a look at this definition that you have up on your screen on the slide. The definition says that development that meets the needs, sustainability is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So basically what we're saying is we need to be aware of our future resources. Our current lifestyles do not support this definition, unfortunately. We all want a comfortable lifestyle, don't we? We all want a comfortable lifestyle, as does everyone in the whole world. But we have to share this planet. If everyone in the same lived in the same way as the as the average Australian, the planet could only support 1.2 billion people. Now we already have a world population of 7 billion, and this is growing rapidly. Why shouldn't everyone around the world all expect to have a similar life? Well, there just are not enough resources to go around. We have to start sharing more and living more sustainably. Let's have a look at this next slide. It's a very interesting slide, actually. It demonstrates that there are just enough resources to carry on the same ways that we have been carrying on up until now. The population, there's just not enough resources. The population has doubled in 40 years. If you look at around the 1950s, in fact 1959, there were 3 billion people, and in 1999 that doubled to 6 billion people. Did you know that it's actually growing? The population is growing at a rate of around 1.14% per year. Let's have a look at the slide and focus on a particular year, let's say 1970, for example. So some of us may have already been born around this time, some not, but we can see on the chart that the world population since then has doubled. The population is growing rapidly by the second. Now, if you're interested in these facts and figures, you can go to this website, which is actually included in the reference list at the end of this webinar. And remember, this webinar will be available after the 1st of December. So that will be there. It's actually on this slide as well. The website is www.worldometers.info, and it actually shows the growth. So the approximate number as of mid-January this year, mid-January 2015, was 7,287,651,280. That's a lot of people. Don't ask me to say that again. That's a very big number. All right. The population is growing, people, but our resources are not replenishing at the same time. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, Australians generated approximately, and here's how much waste we generate, are you ready? 43.8 million tonnes of waste, which equals about 2,080 kilos of waste per person. 2,080 kilos of waste per person, and that was in the year 2006 to 2007. most recent figures. Oh, but I hear you say, but I recycle. I recycle, and I know everyone recycles. Yes, everyone probably does recycle, or almost everyone does recycle. But even taking away the element of waste, for example, recycling, etc., we are still left with the fundamental problem of the overuse of the Earth's resources. The World Wildlife Fund has referred to us needing at least 3 more planets in the future if everyone lived like the average Australian. Now I hear you say, but we found New Earth. We found New Earth 2, which is the twin planet, and we found that recently this year, 2015, and that planet is called Kepler. But that planet Kepler is 1,400 light years away. Do you know how long that would take to get there? Roughly a millennium and a half to get there. And that's if the spaceship could actually travel at the speed of light. So, unfortunately, that's not our answer. Let's see. Oh, someone just mentioned in the questions that they're okay. Thank you very much for letting me know that all is going well. I appreciate that. All right, now, in this slide, I wonder, as we go down this list, and it's a broad list which covers the areas of sustainability, I wonder how many of these areas that you thought of when I asked you to think about the definition of sustainability. So let's have a look. Energy use. Did you think of electricity, gas, coal, oil use, etc.? What about water use? I think most Australians do think about sustainability in the form of water. And waste management we spoke about. What about global resources? Or greenhouse gas emissions? Pollution? What about education and change of habits? Or even political viewpoints and policy? So as you can see, sustainability is more than just recycling. As we go through this webinar, we're going to learn about what we can do as individuals, as educators, and in our services to become more sustainable and to embed sustainability in our services. So we've discovered that sustainability, or we've touched on that sustainability is in fact not only about the environment. It is often thought of in terms of environmental sustainability, such as reducing waste and minimising consumption and protecting and conserving wildlife and natural habits. And these are all important aspects of being sustainable. But as Melinda Robertson points out in part 1, the video of the Early Childhood Association's PLP video series about embedding sustainable practices, and we will be watching one of those today, Melinda Robertson says, sustainability can also be considered more broadly as being able to meet our current needs without infringing on the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Well, then this raises the issue of the importance of thinking about our impact on the lives of future generations. Today's young children represent the first of those future generations, and this makes it really important for us as educators to help them realise the significance of caring for and protecting their environment. Let's have a look at this quote on the slide as cited in What Might Sustainability Look Like in Early Childhood by Julie Davis. I really like this quote. Well, actually, it's a Chinese proverb, and it's included in that document. Let's have a read. If you are thinking a year ahead, plant a seed. If you are thinking a decade ahead, plant a tree. If you are thinking a century ahead, educate the people. And that's where we come in. We are educating ourselves today, and we are going to be educating our children about what sustainability looks like in early childhood in our services. Children can be the strongest advocates for sustainability. Early childhood education for sustainability recognises that young children have capacities to be active agents of change right now, as well as into the future, and that early learning is important for shaping environmental attitudes and knowledge and actions. Have a listen to this comment stated by a 4-year-old child in a recent preschool study represented by Edwards and Cutter Mackenzie in 2011. "Oh no, it will be a wasteland if we don't recycle," this 4-year-old stated as he carefully searched for the little triangle on the bottom of a plastic bottle, and then sorted it into the recycling bin. "Yay, it's got a triangle 5, woohoo!" he exclaimed excitedly. This child is a strong advocate for sustainability, and that child will go home and educate their family as well to hop on board. Let's have a think about our own childhood. Because before we go on, we need to start thinking about what sustainability means to us and how we can excite the children in our service about sustainability. So I'm going to take you right back as far as you can remember. And I want you to think about a favourite pastime or a memory of your childhood. Think about a favourite childhood memory. Some of you might like to close your eyes to do this. That's okay. I'm not there to see. So if you feel comfortable, just go ahead. Maybe lie down on the floor if you like, but make sure you come back and listen as well, please. And don't fall asleep. Think about your favourite childhood memory. What were you doing? Who were you with? Where were you? And what makes it such a great memory? I'll give you a minute. I'll give you less than a minute. That was actually a good excuse for me to have a sip of my coffee. But I would love to share one of my favourite childhood memories with you. One of my favourite childhood memories was going to the local park and initially discovering that there was clay. There was clay in this park and lots of it. So this was an outdoor memory. I was with my brother and some friends, and we discovered the clay and we would scoop the clay up. And to this day, I can remember the cool feeling, the texture, the smooth texture, the earthy smell of the clay. And we would create all sorts of different things. We'd pick the flowers and make little clay gardens. We'd create sculptures out of the clay. And initially we'd be taking this home, and then we realised if we're going to continually take this home, there will be no more clay there. So we decided to make it in the park and then leave it in the park. And that was really a really lovely childhood memory. I hope that you've been able to identify a great childhood memory. I want you to hold on to that childhood memory because we're going to revisit that. Feel free to share them if you like, and you can pop them into the questions bar on the control panel if you like, or just hold on to those memories because we're going to come back to them later. And they're going to assist us in identifying our role in sustainability education. The importance of our role in regards to sustainability is actually recognised in its inclusion with our legal and ethical frameworks, so such as the Code of Ethics and the National Quality Framework, as seen by these quotes taken from them directly. Let's have a look at these. So the first one, the Code of Ethics. Work with children to help them understand that they are global citizens with shared responsibilities to the environment and humanity. That's as suggested in the Code of Ethics. What about the EYLF, the Early Years Learning Framework? Well, that requires us to foster an appreciation for the natural environment as children provides a platform for ongoing environmental education and care for our world. The National Quality Standards states that the service should promote sustainable practices in the immediate service environment and beyond that foster respect and care for the environment. And it also requires educators and children to work together to learn about and promote the sustainable use of resources and to develop and implement sustainable practices. So all of these require educators to support children in learning about sustainable practices and providing environmental education and implementing practice. Okay, but why is this important? Why should we be doing this? Why should we be teaching children about sustainable practices? Well, just take a look at what's happening in our world today. What about last week? One day we had temperature in Sydney of over 42 degrees Celsius. And the next day it dropped 20 degrees down to 22 degrees Celsius in Sydney. What is that telling us about climate change? What is that telling us about global warming? Is that just a natural occurrence, or are we in some way responsible for those climate changes and global warming? What about our resources running out? It's important because they are. We've got a peak oil crisis looming. What about too much waste to dispose of? There are so many people in the world and we all have waste to dispose of. Another important reason could be the build-up of toxic chemicals in our environment, or the food and water crisis. Our current lifestyle is just not sustainable. We must all change for the future, and our children will be the ones having to live with the problems that have been created now and they must learn to develop new sustainable habits. And when are we going to educate them to do this? Right now. They have to learn right now. Now you can choose some of those important issues and discuss them with the children. They could be fabulous provocations for projects, ongoing projects. What are we going to do if we have too much waste? How are we going to assist with decreasing the global warming? What can we do about our food and water crisis? Fabulous provocations to encourage children to begin to think about having a role in being sustainable, creating a sustainable future for themselves. They can take control. They can become responsible. They can be in charge. And I've done these projects with children and I'm always very happily astounded at the knowledge that they bring already to these projects and the passion and enthusiasm that they have to share. Now I'm just noticing that someone else has included a question. Yes, it was too hot. That's exactly right. The 42 degrees that we had last week was too hot. I believe it is quite hot outside again today, but not quite 42 degrees, but still quite hot, getting up there. I think it might be 35 degrees at the moment. So yes, thank you for sharing to that person. I agree, it was extremely hot, and I hope you and all your children were able to stay nice and cool. So our role. We need to be aware of our role. We need to understand that our role is defined, or a role in sustainability is actually identified, as we've seen in the previous slide, in the Code of Ethics, in the Early Years Learning Framework, and for those of you who have school children or in USH, the My Time, Our Place framework, and the National Quality Standard. And while the Code of Ethics and our learning curriculums are what we actually work with every day, the National Quality Standards are what our services are assessed against during an assessment and rating visit. So we need to be aware of them. What are they asking of us? And how do we actually meet them? Let's take a look. The National Quality Standard asks us to embed sustainability. Sustainability education is integral to Area 3 in the National Quality Standard for Early Education and Care. Looking at Standard 3.3, the service requires a service to take an active role in caring for its environment and to contribute to a sustainable future. Moving on to element 3.3.1, it requires service to have sustainable practices which are embedded in service operations. Now that is a key word, embedded, and we're going to look further into that during the webinar at how we can embed sustainable practices in our services. Not just tokenistic ways of looking at sustainability, but having sustainability embedded. And I'm just noticing that there is another question. Let's have a look. And the question is, do you think our government should reduce the number of cars of each family? These days, each house has 3 to 4 cars to use every day. Yes, I do. That is very difficult. However, in my area, I know that the families to the right of me and the families to the left of me, they are 5 people to the right of me, and each of those people have a car. And to the left of me, there are 4. They each have a car and a boat, and they are parked on the street. So my local council is taking action. And the way they know to take action with that is by serving notice that there will be only 1 car allowed to park on the street per house without having to pay. The rest of the cars are allowed to park for 1 hour only, so there's a time limit, and then they will need to move or they will be fined. So I do believe it's on the agenda. It is on the agenda, and I'm grateful, and I really am passionate about that as well. So thank you for that question. I think it's on the agenda. I think it's happening. I think it's a big issue, and slowly we might see that will be happening in all local areas as well. Let's go a little further into the elements. Let's have a look at element 3.3.1. Now 3.3.1, as we've identified in the previous slide, says that sustainable practices should be or are embedded in service operations. Now, some of you may have already experienced an assessment and rating visit and been rated, and some of you may have not yet been assessed. So we know when we have our assessment and rating visit, the following are some of the things that assessment and compliance officers will be looking for. So we need to think about, what will our assessment and compliance officers see? What will they observe? What are they going to see? What can we say or discuss with them? And what can we show them? How are we going to let them know that, yes, we are meeting that standard? We have embedded sustainable practices in our service. Well, let's have a look at what we might be showing them. So we might be showing them educators role modelling sustainable practices. We might be showing children and educators using recycling where appropriate. We might be showing them children being encouraged to care for the environment and given opportunities to engage with natural materials, for example. We might show them our energy efficiency. We might show them that we are conserving water and talking with children about the care of the environment, so that it is embedded into everyday practice. An example comes to mind when I was visiting a service recently, where I overheard a conversation when children were washing their hands. One child had forgotten to turn the tap off after he had finished washing his hands. And another child turned to that child and reminded him, "You need to turn the tap off, you're wasting water. We need to remember, we need to save water." Now it became apparent to me that that conversation had been had before, and perhaps not just once, because it seems like it has been happening again and again and again, because that child who was reminded went, "Oh my goodness, I remember, quick, I'll turn the tap off." And then there were smiles all round. So that is a very good example of sustainability being embedded into daily practice, because the children can actually mentor each other and remind each other when they have been educated. So those are some of the things that the assessment and compliance officer might see. Now sometimes they may not see everything. So you've got to advocate for your service, and you've got to discuss or say things to them. So think about your services, and you might like to share what the assessment and compliance officer might see, or what you might say, or what you might show in regards to this element. Now the see, say, show method was taken from a document that New South Wales Family Daycare have put together called the NQF, or the National Quality Framework for Family Daycare Education Resource: What to See, Say and Show. And this is in the reference list at the end of the website. It's a very useful document to assist you in your self-assessment to see where your service is compliant and where you need to work on, areas you need to work on. Let's have a look at discussion or say. So remembering sustainable practices actually start with your own personal philosophy. So what sort of information or training would expand understanding? So do you provide these to your educators? Sustainability training? Do you find out what their philosophy is? Do you know your own philosophy as an educator or coordinator? And what is your approach to promoting sustainability? Now we all know we are on different parts of this spectrum. Some of us are just beginning. Some of us have been doing this for a little while, and some of us have been doing this for a long time and embedded in our practices, not only in our services, but also at home. So you need to think about this before your assessment and compliance officer comes out. Where do you sit on that scale? Do you think you might need some extra training? And you're here today, so give yourselves a pat on the back, because you are already receiving that extra training, and you will be receiving a certificate of attendance. That's something that you can actually show the assessment and compliance officer. There's evidence there, and we'll talk about show in a minute. So what else are you going to be saying? You're going to talk about the types of practices that have become an absolute habit in your service. So things like, have you got a worm farm? Do you recycle? Have you got a recycling station? And is it obvious that this recycling station wasn't just put up yesterday, the day before the assessment and compliance officer came out, but has been there for a while, and the children are used to that? And how is the assessment and compliance officer going to know? They will know very, very quickly if you have children unsure which bin to put which scraps into, which waste into. So purchase those bins now. That an embedded practice. If you have a worm farm, look after your worms, please. I have visited a couple of centres, services where the poor worms they were starving and they needed something. They needed to drink and they needed something to eat. So look after them. I'm sure you will. What about what we're going to show? What can we show the Assessment and Compliance Officer? What can we show them? We're going to show them the philosophy. Everything stems back to the philosophy of the service. So we're going to show them the philosophy. We're going to show them the program. We can show them documentation about projects, for example, that you have been studying with the children, implementing with the children. We're going to show them policies, for example, our sustainability policy. But remember always that sustainable practices always start with your philosophy. Caring for the environment has to come from the heart. So we're going to show strategies and evidence that information is regularly shared with families as well, because we need families to be on board with us. And a way of doing that is educating the children in the service, and they can take that information home. Or we could be sharing the projects. There could be a documentation wall, or it could be included in newsletter. We've just purchased a worm farm. Thank you very much to the local council for providing this to us. We're learning about what this means and how we can use the compost. We're learning about composting and how we can use this compost to nurture our gardens. That was 3.3.1. Let's have a look at 3.3.2. 3.3.2 talks about that children are supported to become environmentally responsible and should show respect for the environment. Well, it comes as no surprise, I'm sure, that children develop a respect for nature when they are out in nature, when they are experiencing nature, when they have the opportunity to care for and grow their own vegetables and plants, for example. Have a think about your service, and if you'd like to share or just think how an assessment and compliance officer might see, say and show, or how they might see and what you might say and what you might show for this element. What are you going to see? What are they going to see? You need to look around first and have a look and see it through the eyes of the Assessment and Compliance Officer. Walk around your service. What do you see? Do you see that there is respect and responsibility for the natural environment? Do you see, and would the Assessment and Compliance Officer see, environmental education happening? Do the children and educators or staff have access to resources? Are there spaces for growing food? What about recycling? Waste reduction? And are these implementations consistent? Do they see educators discussing with children why caring for the environment is important? Do they see the children following practices such as using the recycling bins automatically? So has this become a habit? Is this habit embedded in practice? Do they see natural materials being used respectfully? Now I'm going to hear some of you, I'm not actually going to hear, but I'm thinking perhaps some of you might be saying, I'm no good with growing vegetables, I'm not a green thumb. Well, let me tell you, people call me black thumb. I'm not very good at it either, but I have made the effort to create a vegetable garden in the service that I was working with and now at home, because I want my children in my service and my children at home to have the experience of growing their own vegetables, to see where food came from, to see the process from beginning to end. And it's been a learning process for me as well, a huge learning curve. And I have to say I'm excited by it now. I'm seeing results, I'm sharing the excitement with the children, and I'm learning along the way with them. We don't have to be the experts. We can learn with them. I've noticed another question has come through, and this person is saying there is evidence of recycling, growing foods and using these foods with cooking. Excellent. I'm really pleased to hear that. So there's evidence of recycling happening there, and the food that is being grown from the beginning and then nurtured throughout the growing process and then at the end being cooked and eaten. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. So that's what you could show, what the assessment and compliance officer would see. What could you say? What could you say to them? Well, you could give us, the assessor, examples of methods used to reduce carbon footprint, so such as the recycling or water saving, power saving, or minimising the use of toxic chemicals. So we're going to see examples of these in the video at the end of this webinar. You could say, discuss the development and implementation of strategies and the program. But what are you going to show? Again, the philosophy. Always show the philosophy. And you're going to show written documentation illustrating planning experiences for children caring for the environment. So documentation about children's learning in this area. You're going to show that this information is available to families. So information on sustainability is available to families. And you're going to show the program with activities that promote sustainable practices to families. Remember, involve your local community. Involve your families. Now I'm going to ask you to think back to your childhood memory. Okay. Hopefully you can still remember it. How many of these memories, if you had more than one or just the one, was this memory a memory of an outdoor time? And most people I've spoken to in the past, when I've asked that question, would say yes. So how often did you spend outside as a child? What percentage of time do you think you spent outside as a child? Do you think that this percentage is the same for the children in your service or for children now? Now, I'm going to guess you're going to say no. And we've had a lot of new technology that has been exposed to us that are keeping ourselves and our children more often than not indoors. How many of you have experienced, perhaps not in your service, but if you have children of your own, the increased amount of time that these children are on their electronic devices compared with the amount of time that they play outside? This is quite common, and I know this is the case for myself and my own children. So I wanted to create beautiful, inviting, engaging outdoor spaces to get them back outside and back into nature. We have another question or comment. Thank you very much. I appreciate these, and it mentions one of our educators visits the local nursery to buy seedlings, which they take back home and plant in the garden, then care for and later use in cooking experiences. Isn't that a lovely thing to do? So that educator goes to the local nursery, picks up the seedlings, cares for them at home, and then once they're, I'm assuming, grown enough to be used to harvest, they use them in the cooking. I love that idea. You could even plant the seedlings in your service. Thank you for sharing. So back to our outdoor play. Are your children, either at home or in your service, spending as much time, the same amount of time outside that you did as a child? Well, we know research actually shows that there has been a dramatic shift in childhood activity, with only 1 in 10 children playing outside once a day. This is frightening. 1 in 10 children playing outside once a day. What are we as educators going to do about that? So research is actually indicating that children are fast becoming what Richard Louv, who's a journalist and writer on families, the community and nature, labelled as nature deficit. They are becoming nature deficit, and it is becoming, and it's known as, a nature deficit disorder. So Richard Louv is saying that without having the experiences of nature and feeling connected to the environment, why would children feel the need to save something that they don't see as important? Something to consider. So if children don't spend time outside, or enough time outside experiencing the wonders of our natural environment, why would they see it as important to save? Let's have a look at this quote taken from Davis, Julie and Elliot in Mud Pies and Daisy Chains, Connecting Your Young Children and Nature. It states, in early childhood, there is a window of opportunity to facilitate the connections with a natural environment that will last a lifetime. Let us as educators provide this window of opportunity. Let us be the provocation, the provocateurs, so to speak. Okay, we're all excited about this journey that we're on, but what can we do? How are we going to change this? How are we going to provide these opportunities to children? What does this look like in our service? Well, I'm hoping that when I asked you to think about a childhood memory, it was a positive memory, first of all, one that you were fond of, and it brought a smile to your face. And I would like that very sense of wonder, that childhood memory that brought a smile to your face, to be rekindled in everyone. Hopefully it was rekindled in you just now, and then you can foster it in the children. So that exact feeling, that sense of wonder and connectedness with nature that I remember so well in my clay scenario, it's in all of us. And when you consider children's natural curiosity, it's in children just waiting to be explored and nurtured. So as early childhood educators, we are aware of how important the early years are and our role in lifelong learning. So we can be that person. We can excite. We can instill, foster that sense of wonder. And how are we going to do this? What can we do to make the change? Let's have a look at the slide. We can provide opportunities to be outdoors every day. Now I know, and I've heard over and over in some services, today it's too cold to go outside. Today it's too hot to go outside. Today it's too wet to go outside. I think, other than that 42-degree day, we could probably be outside most days, regardless of the weather. If it's wet, why not send a note home to parents requesting their permission to go outside, for the children to go outside with their raincoats and gumboots on? How much fun is splashing in puddles? What about on the cold days? Why not go outside all rugged up? On the hot days, why not request permission from parents for children to go out, and remember that the right times of the day, mind you, not at the hottest time of the day, but early in the morning or very late in the afternoon, to go outside in their swimming costumes and perhaps do lots of water play. I urge you to provide as many opportunities to be outdoors every day. Now, to be outdoors every day, you need to have an outdoor area that looks inviting and interesting. So have a look at your outdoor environment after today's webinar and ask yourself, would I like to hang out in this environment? What do I like about it? What don't I like about it? What else can I put there? And guess who you can ask? Ask the children. And respectfully accept what they say, no matter how crazy it might be. They might come up with some really good ideas. And those ideas that you may not be able to because of certain constraints you may not be able to implement, don't just dismiss them. Talk about why you might not be able to put them in outdoors. Make sure there's lots of natural materials being used, not just outdoors, but bring the outdoors in. Have a look at those natural materials that you might like to use and bring them in. Bring them into the areas that you have indoors and create fabulously engaging experiences using those materials. Now, there are so many examples or suggestions. You could just Google them. So many websites that would be able to assist you with particular sustainable experiences or natural experiences. Whilst you are outside, make sure you utilise shade. Make sure you do have shade. If you don't have shade, I mean, you're required to. So use your shade cloths or under your pergolas, etc. Use that area. Use existing plants and areas of interest for your play areas. And I'll show you in another slide a photo that I took of children who had, we just recently did a bit of gardening and cutting back some branches, a tree with branches, and the children just spontaneously picked those branches up and started to make a little teepee tent. And you'll see that in one of the slides. Go ahead and start some long-term outdoor projects. Often services program their indoors really, really well and forget about the outdoors. Use the outdoors as another learning environment. Think of some projects that you could begin outdoors. Now let's look at the early years learning framework. And what does it say? We know it's fundamental to the framework, sustainability, and it's a view of children's lives being characterised by belonging, being, and becoming. The essential approach of the early years learning framework is for children to have a sense of belonging. And we can help children to belong to our service, and we do that really, really well. But what about also helping children to belong to their environment? Can we help them belong to their environment by questioning ourselves and providing some of these things that we've been speaking about? Let's have a look at these questions. What do we do to encourage children to belong to their environment? Have a look at this picture. Okay, I'm sure there's some mixed reactions out there. I've heard of people saying, oh my gosh, that's disgusting, it's dirty, I hope she doesn't put that in her mouth. Or, oh, how are we going to wash her now? Her mum's coming in an hour and we've got to clean the clothes and we've got to wash her up. What if she gets sick? And then I've heard the flip side of that as well. I've heard people say, how wonderful. Look at that amazing sensory experience, and we know these ages learn through their senses. Look what she's feeling. Look what she's discovering. I wonder if she's actually, really absorbing the textures of that mud. What is she creating? So do the children in your service have natural materials and environments to explore and play with? Ask yourself that question. Are they guided to enjoy nature and to be creative? Or are they, the messages that they're receiving, that it's too messy, that you can get sick by playing like this? That's why your personal philosophy comes into play here, is so important. And it's what we call the hidden curriculum. So if you have these thoughts about yourself, you need to think about those and how they might impact on the children in your service. Think about the children if they feel comfortable and relaxed in their outdoor environment. We all know that there are some children who do prefer to stay indoors, but that should challenge us. That should excite us to come up with creative ways of inviting them into the outdoors. Think about why are they preferring to stay indoors? Is it because there are certain indoor experiences that they prefer to play with? Well, grab those indoor experiences and place them outdoors. Come up with other ways. Perhaps they're a quiet, reserved child. Well, there should be quiet areas, peaceful areas outdoors that the children could also go to in times that they want some peace and quiet. Perhaps create a really cosy book corner under the branches or in a tent. So, do the children in your service feel a sense of belonging to a natural or outdoor environment? And what about you? Do you feel a sense of belonging to the outdoor environment? And if not, why not? And what can you do about it? Have a think. Another question has come through. And it says, we have to show our children how to spend as much as we can time outside doing their interested hobbies instead of sitting down for hours watching TV or using touch phones. I wholeheartedly agree. We are role models, so we have to show them. So we need to, I'm hoping this doesn't happen in your services, but outside of your services, put the iPhones down, put the electronics down, get out there, get into the outdoors, become active, go out into the beautiful day. Or as educators, go outside and enjoy and role model the kinds of experiences, happy experiences that the children could be involved in. I absolutely agree. Thank you very much for that comment. Now we've spoken about belonging, and now we're going to look at being. So what do you think you are doing in your services to encourage children to be in the present moment? What are you doing about this now? Do you think you're doing enough? Or do you think you need to think about this? And so I was just looking to see if there were any more questions, that you need to think about this and how you could do this. Adults these days are not very good at just being. We are constantly rushing around. We are stuck to timetables and reaching goals and being aware of what's coming next and rushing what is currently happening now. Children are very good at being. So children are going to be role modelling to us how to be. Do the children have enough time to relax and enjoy the outdoors? Do they have time to simply just be in your outdoor environment? So watch the children as they play outdoors. They will show you how to be in their outdoor environment. Can they use their senses to explore nature and smells and textures, or colours and brightness, tastes and sounds, just like that clay experience that I had and that child was having in the previous slide? Does your outdoor environment create a sense of wonder, curiosity, and a place to be? A place just to be. A place to think, perhaps. A place to contemplate, a place to play, a place to enjoy, a place to discover. Do the children have opportunities to see and be part of ongoing projects like growing seeds, for example? And finally, from the early years learning framework, becoming. Are the children experiencing nature and its wonders enough to want to become responsible for it? Are the children learning how to care for their world and their future? Do they have role models, such as yourselves, to show them how important these things are? Looking at the picture, there's a recycling station. So you can see that there's pictures on there so the children can identify which bin to put which waste into. And the first one, I like the picture of the rooster. No prizes for guessing what goes in there. Food scraps. But they need to know which food scraps because not all food scraps can go in there. In the second one, we have pictures of plastic bottles. So the children are learning about what can go into the plastics container. And finally, paper. So children don't have to be able to read to know which bin to put these in because there are pictures there. The middle one has the title as well, the word plastic. You might like to include those on the other bins to bring in the literacy curriculum as well. Now, are your children learning to become responsible citizens and to value the Earth's resources? How are we going to teach them this? We can teach them through a number of different ways. We know we can teach them through this recycling station. What about in our everyday singing, in our transitions with children? We can sing songs like this one that you can actually sing to if you're happy and you know it. And you can make songs up. I sing and make songs up all day, but the trick there is to remember them. And the children will pick up if you're singing different words, the words you sang yesterday. But this song is written by Freda, and it goes like this. If you see a piece of litter, pick it up. If you see a piece of litter, pick it up. You will make the world look better if you pick up all the litter. If you see a piece of litter, pick it up. Now, how easy was that? I hope you were singing along with me. There are many, many, many other ways that you can teach children about sustainability and include those in your experiences. And the handout that you will be receiving tomorrow gives you some of these examples, and you can also Google Dr. Google, or you can go on to Google and identify particular websites that will share their resources with you as well. And speaking of sharing, can the children share their ideas and learn more? So think about, who would the children be sharing their ideas with? They'd be sharing their ideas with each other, with their peers. They'd be sharing their ideas with you, the educator. And hopefully, and we really hope this happens, that they will be going home and sharing their ideas with the family and then learning more as well. Now, we mentioned projects with children before, and here are some ideas about how to begin projects with children. And I think it's really important to remember to start small. Projects can become huge, but don't think of the end product. Just start in the beginning. Start small. And it might be something as simple as when you see a child forget to turn the tap off. We can provide a provocation in way of a question. What happens if everyone forgot to turn the tap off? What will happen to our water? By the way, where does water come from? How can we get more water? That's just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. And then your project begins. Now remember to involve the children at all stages. So you're asking these questions. You're asking the children these questions. And then you're documenting their answers along the way. Now remember, it's important to let the children know that you will respect their responses. So they might come up with really absurd and silly responses, but you're going to put them down anyway, and you're going to talk through them. Remember that you need to be prepared. So prepare all the resources and equipment needed. Now that might not be in the initial stages. You might not know what you're going to need until you've had this discussion with the children. And then the children will come up with things that you might need, equipment and resources. They might come up with things like a barometer, or something like a rain gauge. You can include your families and your local community in these projects as well. So what does your local council have that could assist you in your current project? You should plan for immediate start and delayed results. So just be prepared. Don't stress. Don't stress about the environment's appearance, because some of these projects are going to get messy, and messy is okay. We can learn whilst being messy. The most important thing of all is, and you can all read this together, enjoy. Make sure you're enjoying it with the children. You're learning along the way and you're displaying your passion. Again, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to go home and study the water cycle before you introduce it to the children. Absolutely be aware and know something about it, but not everything. That's what you can do with the children. You can research it together. Let's have a look at some other ideas. Oops, that we could do. Oh, sorry. I think we may just go back to the previous slide. Here's some ideas. Okay, some projects and plans that I have implemented over the years. Chickens and pets, worm farms or composting, growing veggies, and as we could see, that was a whole chain of events, including harvesting and eating at the end. So children picking crops to take home or using food provided in care. Sustainable resources, so books, natural materials, etc., songs that you might like to sing, as we just did, or purchasing toys made from natural materials, or make your own from recycled products. Just a few ideas. As I said, there are many, many, many more out there, and some of which will be included on the handout that you'll receive tomorrow via email, and some you can Google as well. The next few slides are some photos of inviting outdoor environments. Let's have a look. So you know, some inviting outdoor environments that are just really simple, and some of them just add resources that you might already have, or bring the children's world into the outdoors, or ask families to bring things from home. And the first one on the left is a lovely little cozy, peaceful area made out of sunflowers. Wouldn't you just love to go in there and have a little rest? Curl up in there and think about your day. The second one in the middle, you can have a good look, includes pine cones, all natural materials except for the rug in the middle, which provides the contrast, which is also nice. So very open-ended materials that the children can use without thinking that there's a right or a wrong way of using them. So how could they use those pine cones? How could they use those pieces of wooden stumps that have been cut up? What about the wooden bucket up the back as well? And there's some river stones included. Think about the scope, the wonderful experiences that could be used. Think about the curriculum, you know, there could be mathematical concepts being discovered or science experiments being made. All sorts of different things. And the last one we have here, if you can see, a whole bunch of cars in the car park. waiting to leave and drive on the road. So they're just simply pavers that have been put down, and with a chalk, someone has gone and chalked the middle of the road, and the children loved using that one. These are really inviting outdoor environments. Let's have a look at some more. Here on the top left, we have a little boy who's made friends with a scarecrow. Now that scarecrow's made with the children's help, using the children's clothes, and a discussion was had about what scarecrows are for. Moving along, in the middle on the top, you have a little fairy garden or gnome garden, and that's just created in a lid, a plastic bottle lid with some plastic figurines. We all know the pet stone. There's some beautiful pet stones that have been made. They can either be pets, or they can be paperweights, or they can just be simply objects to admire. Down the bottom on the left, we have some old wine barrels that have been used to plant grasses. This is a lovely sensory experience. In the middle, I'm sure many of you have made these already, we have Mr. Grasshead. And so the grass seeds were planted. Some soil was placed inside a stocking and tied at the end, and some grass seeds were planted up the top, and then Mr. Grasshead was decorated to make a face. And this was looked after, watered, and grass grew to become, yes, you guessed it, hair. And finally we have the very, very simple bird feeder made out of a bottle to attract birds to your garden. Some more some more comments have come in. So here's one. Having nice shady areas where you can sit with the children and enjoy the experience with the children are what one participant is saying that they have in their service. Oh, that's beautiful. I'd love to come to your service and sit in those shady areas. And someone has said, good song, thanks for sharing. My pleasure. Hope you enjoyed. And one more, the volume. Oh, the volume is all of a sudden switched off. I hope that's not what you're experiencing. Please let me know if it is. Okay, I'll continue, and hopefully if there is a problem, people will let me know. I did mention that we're going to be talking about how we can actually embed sustainability into our service and the importance of this. Oh, thank you very much. Someone said that their volume is okay. That's lovely. Thank you for letting me know. So, as noted, element 3.3.1 refers to sustainability as being embedded, and that is not tokenistic, not happening once or twice, but consistently happening. So for sustainability to be embedded into our everyday practices, it should be covered in our own personal and service philosophies. So the service as a whole should develop a policy and seek the input of all stakeholders. So your stakeholders might include your committees, management, staff, including the educators, and families and children. So review your philosophies. Review your philosophies and set some goals. Ensure your service actually has a sustainability policy. Review your own practices. Start with small steps that you'll be able to achieve, just like with the projects we spoke about, and involve and educate the children and their families. Now, you might have services in your local community that are already doing this and doing this really well. So find those services and see if they can support you, and definitely establish networks with these services. Think about other policies or procedures that you have that could encompass elements of sustainability. So some of these might include hygiene or your cleaning policy, for example. So how can we use the least harmful products to clean? What about your purchasing policy? Should you include to purchase toys made out of natural materials as much as possible, toys and equipment? What about your outdoor play policy and your programming and curriculum as well? Now the next slide is a video which we will not be showing right now, but what we're going to look at is we're going to watch this video from the Early Childhood Australia's talking about practice series later in the webinar, and we're going to do that to have a look at how CNK Redlands Community Kindergarten, which is in Brisbane, has embedded sustainable practices into their service. And so we're going to look at part 2 of a 3-part video later. So we'll come back to that, and you'll notice that that link to that video is in our chat section on the control panel. We'll have a look at that after. So moving along to the 4 R's of sustainability. What are the 4 R's of sustainability? So education for sustainability, or EFS, supports children to become socially responsible and to show respect for the environment. The 4 R's fosters environmentally conscious actions that children can readily take as part of their day-to-day lives. So the 4 R's are simply rethink, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Let's look a little bit deeper. So we need to rethink. Let's rethink about what we really need. What do we really need? What do we need to buy? And what do we do? We need to reduce our waste and our use of products, energy and water usage. So think about waste packaging when you buy a product, for example. Think about your consumption of resources and avoid waste packaging. Food waste is a major environmental issue, so cut down on food waste going into landfill. Buy only what you need. Compost or start a worm farm to minimise green waste going to landfill. So I urge you, if you don't already have a compost bin or a worm farm, pop out to your local council and purchase one. What can you reuse? What items can you reuse? So many items actually have another life. So your yogurt containers, they can make a really good paint and glue pot. What about your steel drink bottles that could be continuously refilled? So the new term is upcycling, everyone. I'm sure most of you have already heard of that new term, upcycling. And this is taking an old item that can be made into something new and useful. For example, some of you may have seen the old wooden pallets being used to make a frame for a veggie bed. They're actually quite attractive and they work very, very well. Try to buy only items that can be recycled. So even the items that have been reused, when their use time is up, they can actually be recycled. The good news is, everyone, that family daycare is actually off to a good start. So working within a home environment, family daycare could be seen as an advantage to embedding sustainability. So just think about what we already do. So we delete resources in a home and work environment because of the dual use of our premises and equipment. We minimise our travel and that of our families because, well, there's no travel for the educator. Our own sustainable practices and beliefs within the home can be easily incorporated into the family daycare model. So really, nothing needs to change if you're already doing it. We can make decisions and control our waste management as opposed to working somewhere else that may not dispose of waste appropriately. We can role model to families and children every day how sustainability looks within a home environment. And family daycare can incorporate home and lifestyle routines into everyday practice. And as we said, a greater control of personal waste management and the ability to role model and apply sustainability for children and families. Speaking of embedding still, to be able to truly embed, we need to educate ourselves about sustainability and what we can do. So being here for this session shows that you are wanting to know more. So high five to you, or cuddle, or pat on the back, whichever you prefer. You're already on the journey. Well done. So you're already educating yourself. Now you need to go and look at your services, look at what's happening there, look at what's available around, research online, research your own local area, involve the families and the children, and look at developing a team or implementing a whole team approach. We can all do this together. So we need to educate ourselves first. And let's look at our environments. So now what we're going to do is actually put into action, or some of the things that we've discussed, into our own environments, both as a home and a family daycare service. So you need to look around your home and see what's already happening and what can change. So some changes might just be small but make a huge difference. And some items are huge and may actually become long-term goals. So what rooms in your service, in your home, could be considered? We've got the kitchen, the bathroom, the laundry, the living area, outdoors, play areas and entertaining. These are all rooms that we can look at. Let's look at the kitchen first. Let's look at savings in the kitchen. Maybe you can use alternatives to the oven. Maybe if it's a hot day, don't use the oven at all. Cool salads, like in that example in the photo, could be used. What about simmer pots gently rather than rapid boiling? It uses less energy. We could use bamboo chopping boards. That's a sustainable resource. We could shop locally and for foods that are in season. We could recycle our food scraps, and we've already spoken about compost bins or worm farms. We could drink filtered tap water rather than purchasing bottled water, and check the seals on your fridges and oven. Make sure that they are tight and that the heat or the cool is not leaking out. Moving around your home, first we're going to be talking about our lunches. What about a waste-free lunch? So you could encourage your families, if your families are bringing food in, to try and create a waste-free lunch. So many schools are already trying to introduce this idea. I know my children in their school have what they call waste-free Wednesdays. So it's only one day a week, but it's the beginning. And every waste-free Wednesday, there is a waste-free monitor that goes around to each classroom and checks, or each class group outdoors and checks, and then comes back and reports to the chief waste-free monitor, and an award is given for the classroom that has displayed the most waste-free lunches. So there's incentive there. And the children get very, very excited, and I'm constantly reminded on Wednesdays that it's Waste-Free Wednesday, and please don't include any wrapping papers or plastic bags and so on. But I've actually gone one step further, and in my home we do waste-free lunch every day. So pack it in a reusable lunchbox or container instead of a paper or plastic bag. And use bulk quantities and then portion instead of individual snack packs. So rather than providing individual snack packs of sultanas, for example, buy in bulk and then just put those into the lunchbox. Bring drinks in stainless steel water bottles that can be refilled. You could use cloth or napkins or face washers instead of throwing away paper napkins. Now I know that that could be seen as being unhygienic, but in the family daycare service where the educator has 4 children, for example, each child could have their own face cloth. I know in other services where there are many children, like for example in long daycare centres, that might not be the most hygienic. It might be the most sustainable but not the most hygienic practice. So you need to be sensible and consider hygiene as well as the environment, sustainability. Make sure that when families do bring waste-free lunches in, that you actually thank them and acknowledge that and praise them for their efforts. You might like to put some tips into your newsletters of how they could comply with waste-free your waste-free lunch policy. You can encourage families to bring in ideas as well and be included. So we need to provide children with the ability to reduce and recycle, otherwise bad habits will continue. So we need to encourage this, not just with our children, but with their families. Now we're walking around our home and we're in the bathroom. Toilet paper, let's try and choose recycled products and preferably unbleached for both toilet paper and hand towels. Remember the half flush button on the toilet? Let's use it. What about those dripping taps? It might only seem like a little drip, but many little drips lead to litres and litres of wastage. Have you got a low flow shower head? That's something to consider as well. And you're not having showers during the time you have children in care, although you may need to shower some children. Make sure the showers you're having shorter showers for shorter periods of time. Absolutely reduce the amount of chemicals you use in your bathroom. And again, people may not realise, but you can recycle or compost your paper towels. So pop them in the paper recycle bin or put them into your compost bins. Now we're going to be walking into our laundry. Take a walk into your laundry, not physically, just imagine please. I want you here with me. Use the cold water cycle if possible. Now we know when there are soiled items needing to be washed, we must use the hot water cycle. But there may be occasions where we can use the cold water cycle. Now someone has put either a question or someone says their volume's okay and their volume is not clear. I'm hoping, I've just pressed something, so I'm hoping it becomes a little bit clearer now. Please let me know if there is still a problem. In the laundry, look for water and power efficiency when buying new appliances. Install grey water recycling systems if possible. Wait until you have a full load if possible, or if not, then choose an eco wash. And speaking of eco, use eco-friendly products. They are out there. There are many of them to choose from now. So there's no excuse. We can find them and use them. And finally, it is best to use sunlight to dry your clothes. So if possible, hang them out outside and avoid using the dryer. Moving around your home again, we're in the general living areas. I'm hoping people can hear me. Yes, someone says they can. In the general living areas, use energy-saving lights. You know, the energy-saving lights. Go around and have a look in your house. Do you have them? Or where would you need them? Perhaps you could install solar tubes to utilise natural light, or you could insulate in your roofs and your windows and eliminate drafts. You could use curtains and blinds to block out heat or keep in the warmth. And always use heating and cooling wisely. So rather than putting the heating on, could you just pop a jumper on? Or rather than putting the air conditioning unit on, could you just take a layer of clothing off? Use eco-friendly paints to prevent harmful toxins in the environment. Let's move outdoors. Think about your outdoor environment. Okay, are you growing veggies and fruit already? If not, is that a possibility? Are you composting as we've spoken before, or do you have a worm farm? If not, as soon as this webinar is finished, I'm assuming you're all going to go to your local councils and purchase one. Can you keep the house cool using trees or awnings or blinds? I know I've left all my blinds closed today because I knew it was going to be a hot day. And it makes a huge difference keeping the blinds closed. You'll be surprised. Consider installing solar power and water tanks. Use water wisely. So drought-resistant plants and landscaping, you could plant drought-resistant plants, and think of your landscaping and think of your watering times as well. You might need to minimise water play. So maybe have a container that does not get refilled, and children can learn about water conservation that way. Of course, if it becomes really grubby and dirty and becomes a health hazard, absolutely tip that water out, please do. But just keep an eye on it. Here are some play ideas. So some of the play ideas might include 3-bin recycling centre that we saw in one of the earlier pictures. You might like to use one reuse bin for items such as egg cartons, string, ribbon, wrapping paper, plastic containers, wool, or old toys that you might encourage families to bring in. And that bin could be used for those. I urge you to purchase quality toys that have multiple purposes, that would last longer and can be used in more than one play situation. Put smaller quantities of paints or craft glue out to start, and craft materials, and then replenish if needed. We have all seen the craft table being resourced with pots of paints or craft glue to the top, and lots of resources which end up on the floor. So if we start with smaller quantities, we can always top them up rather than having to throw excess out. Now use all your play activity times to role model and talk about waste and conservation of resources. So if children are grabbing huge handfuls of craft materials and sticking them on, talk about that. Ask them, is that something that you really would like to happen in your artwork? Explain to me why. And if they have a good explanation, absolutely. Otherwise, and explain, perhaps you don't need so much, and explain why that's a good practice. All right, when we're thinking of entertaining, we're looking at things like invitations. Now, we used to all send paper invitations out. And whilst it's really lovely to get the children to create their own paper invitations by doing their own drawings and being really involved in the process, how about we think about creating electronic invitations rather than the paper? And there's some fabulous programs out there where children can actually create on the computer and then email them to families. And they really enjoy doing these. What about sending seed invitations? There's a lovely way of letting families know what you're doing in the service and educating them as well, and inviting them to become part of your sustainability journey. Send seed invitations that can be planted at a future date. Perhaps you can purchase biodegradable or compostable tableware, or you could purchase sustainable and reusable party decorations. So some party decorations have been made from upcycled materials. Avoid helium balloons because they are not biodegradable. They don't break down in our environment and they just take up room in landfills. Perhaps you'd like to bake your own cake and engage guests with a nature or eco-based activity. So maybe you could send those seed invitations home, and when it's time for the party, hopefully enough time has passed for those seeds to grow into seedlings, and they've nurtured those, they could bring them back and plant them in your garden. A lovely shared activity. I haven't heard that anyone's volume is down or unclear or not working, so hopefully all is going well. Okay. Now we've spoken about sustainability, we've spoken about how you can embed them into your service. We've spoken about what the assessor and compliance officer might be able to see, what you could say or show the assessment and compliance officer during your assessment and rating visit. So now I want you to think of some goals. Set some today based on the information in this webinar. Go home, or if you are already at home, think, which most of you are, think of 3 ideas that you can implement in your service. There were many ideas in this webinar, but I just want you to think of 3 ideas that you can implement into your service. And start now before it's too late. It's not the end of the webinar. I just want you to start thinking, what could you take from this webinar and implement into your service? It might be you're going to go out and purchase that compost bin or worm farm. It might be that after this service, you're going to get outside with the children. If you have children in your service at the moment, or tomorrow, you're going to spend more time outdoors. It might be that you're just going to take a walk around your local community to have a look at what's already out there. What other services are doing this, and will they share their information with me? Build up your networks. But start now before it's too late. I really like to say it's never too late. But looking at what's happening in our environment now, maybe one day it will be too late. So let's make a difference now. Let's educate ourselves and let's educate our children to become sustainable for our present and our future world. Here are some useful websites that you could quickly jot down. I just want to remind you that this webinar will be available, the recording of the webinar will be available on our website, the New South Wales Family Daycare website, after the 1st of December, which is next Tuesday. So it won't be available on the Tuesday, it will be available shortly after. And you can just go onto the website and click and download. So here are some useful websites for you, and again, you'll be able to view those again on the website. Thank you. Someone has mentioned that the volume is clear. Thank you very much for letting me know. Now another question has come in, or a comment, or sharing of a resource. This is exciting. This person's mentioning that they also use Cool Australia, so that's COOL, Cool Australia. It has free resource ideas. Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that one. Cool Australia. Excellent. This is what we like, sharing resource ideas. Just a little note to mention that your feedback is actually valued, because it enables us to continue to deliver relevant, current, responsive and quality professional development. So you will be receiving a feedback form tomorrow with that handout via email. And once you have completed that feedback form and returned it to us, we will then issue you with your statement of attendance for this webinar. And that statement of attendance is, remember, it's important because it's evidence that you are on the sustainability journey and you can show your assessment and compliance officer during your A&R visit. Here is a reference list. Again, that will be available on the website. Now I'm just moving to the next slide because at this stage what I would like to do is actually thank you for coming. What we're going to do now is watch this video. I will still be here, so I'm not going away. I will still be here attending this webinar whilst we are watching the video. So if you have any other questions or concerns, or if you'd like to share some more resource ideas, feel free to continue to put those in the question panel, and I will be able to type answers to those. I can type personal answers, and I can also type my answers to be viewed by all participants. So I'm not leaving the webinar. I am still going to remain here, and you're most welcome to engage with me still whilst this video is on. Now, this video, as mentioned before, is a look at how C and K Redlands Community Kindergarten in Brisbane has embedded sustainable practices into their service. So there's some really nice ideas that you could take away and implement into your own service. And again, this is part 2 of a 3-part video from ECA, the Early Childhood Australia's TAPS, or Talking About Practice series. And they're designed to support discussion and reflection on the National Quality Standard, and it links with the National Early Years Learning Framework. So there is that down the bottom, there's a reference to where you would find that on the website. But for now, I have included that into the control panel in the chat section. So if you'd like to now go to the chat section in the control panel, you will see that there is a link. And all you need to do is to put your cursor onto that link and click, and then press start. Now, I'm aware that a lot of you will be doing this at different times, so the webinar may finish at different times for most of you, and that's why I'd just like to say right now, thank you so much for attending this webinar. I hope you're going to take away some ideas and thoughts about how you can embed sustainable practices into your services. I hope that I have instilled some passion in you, some excitement that you can then go back to your services and share with your other educators and other staff, as well as your children. And I wish you luck on your sustainability journey. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope to have you present at another webinar, or even maybe meet you one day. I wish you all the best. So you now can click on the video link. I will be now muting myself so you can listen to the video.
I'm Margaret Sear, and I'm the teacher here at C&K Redlands Community Kindergarten in Cleveland in Brisbane. I've been here for quite a lot of years now, at least 20. And I love working in this service. It's just such a natural service, and it's so embodied with its sustainability that it feels like a really pleasant place to be and a way to work. I've been the director over the past 15 or so years, and I've only just stepped down as teacher in the last couple of years. So I've been very involved with the centre's journey in sustainability. I believe in sustainability issues, and education for sustainability is really, really important. I think sustainability is important for a service in that you need to be looking at your carbon footprint, you need to be looking at the energy usage and how you can minimise that and how you can make best use of everything. And then of course in the purchasing and all your materials, what's the most sustainable way of travelling forward for children.
So you've been able to do a lot of that in recent years, haven't you?
Yes.
You were telling me earlier about how much, in terms of savings, in terms of power and water and all those things. Yes,
it's been probably since the early 2000s we started really looking seriously at what we were going to do here at C&K Redlands, and so we started putting some things in place. We've put in some big water tanks.
Oh yes, I can see those.
Yes, they're 5,000 litres.
Yep.
And they're all interconnected off the roof, and then they have a backup pump to the mains, just because sometimes the water gets quite low and you can't use it, because these actually run the toilets in this unit.
I was going to say, you use these for the toilets and washing as well?
We do a little bit of washing, but we've also got just a tap here that we can come and collect the water from and take down to our other play areas. So we've actually cut our water usage by half and our energy usage by half at this point. So as I was saying to you, a typical household in Redlands uses about 21 kilowatt hours of power energy a day, and we're down at 14, so in our centre.
That's fairly impressive for a double unit centre.
A double unit centre, yes.
So we're using less than the average household.
Yes, it is. It's really good. We put out 1.5 bins in our recycling bins every fortnight, and that's just paper towel, and that's all we put out. And our rubbish bin's down to about a half a bin or one, and that's it a week. So we're doing quite well with keeping rubbish down. It's a very inviting place. It's like your own backyard. There's nooks and there's crannies, there's little places to play. I'll show you these lovely spiders we've got.
Ah, wow. A spider frame.
Yes. Our playground is very vegetated, and so we get a lot of spiders, and the children have been extremely keen on these golden orbs.
They're beautiful.
And they've been here for a little while now, as you can see. So they've got their nest and they've got their web, and they've got their little prey bundles that they collect. Yeah. And sometimes the children come here and try to work out if the male, these are females because they're quite large, and they often eat the males, so that they come and try and see if they can find a male somewhere around and see how he's going.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, most people would be sweeping these away and being worried about what they might do.
Well, even when we have the pest people in, we have a rent-a-kill group that comes through and uses low chemicals. We actually ask them not to go anywhere near the spiders in the yard, and our cleaners know that that they shouldn't either. Everything we do has a sustainable side to it. So even when you're looking at the curriculum or you're looking at the NQS, it's not a separate issue, it's just part of. So everything we do, we think, is this a sustainable thing? I think that the thing that's been most important is that it's been small steps.
Okay, yes. I was going to say, there's a lot there, but it seems to have happened over quite a period of time.
Yes, you can't do everything instantly, but you can do little steps all the time that make big differences. Children can be the strongest advocates for all of this, so if you encourage them to do it, then usually they go home with that language and talk to their parents. And many of our families choose the centre because of the fact that we encourage healthy foods and we encourage the sustainable issues. The children are very conscious of why they recycle, and most of our lunch boxes are completely litter free. We have a few things that might be recycled and some that are a little bit of rubbish, but usually we just keep encouraging and you just do the best you can. And so when we're talking, we talk about using paper that we've reused from another purpose. And we actually have a program at the beginning of the year where we encourage the families to bring in natural materials for artwork rather than buying, and we talk to the children about that.
Well, it's one of the things that struck me being here today is the fact that there is, I mean, obviously there's some bought materials, but so much of what you use is found or recycled or donated materials.
Yes, it's found, recycled and donated. Your staff are probably a big thing. So if you all have a shared vision, and we sat down a few years ago and actually thought about what we wanted, and we knew that the beautiful natural environment was something that people came for, so we actually have chosen to follow that as being the way we're going.
And do you think you need that first? I mean, for a centre that hasn't really engaged with sustainability to now, do you think you need to get ethos right first? You probably
need to do both at the same time. I don't think we got the ethos first and then went ahead and did it.
Okay.
I think the ethos grew with what we were doing, and that's because as you start to do it and you
see the
live
benefits.
It and you see the benefits and the children come on board.
There's obviously been a lot of hard work and a lot of planning to get to what you've got now. For a service though that doesn't maybe have the advantage of your starting point, doesn't have a beautiful natural environment to begin with.
Yes.
Where do you think you should start? What would be your advice?
My advice is to take small steps, and you can start very easily. The first thing is to start talking with your children and starting to get some of the practices into place inside and outside. Look at the equipment you've got, and budgets are very hard these days, so look around and look for found materials. Even without grass, a lot of services of course have got their artificial grass, and there's nowhere to dig a garden. Gardening with children is really important, so connecting with the earth and getting involved is important even for babies. So just finding materials and other equipment that you can use to build a garden in. We started with one of our gardens in our old water tank, in our water tub, and just drilled some holes in the bottom, and one day it'll collapse, but you know, it's been there for at least 5 years at the moment. So I would always try to get a few containers and get a bit of a garden going. If possible, think about the grants you can get. Think about what in your centre that you cannot move, like your fixtures such as your power and your water, and then look around and say, what else can I do? So you might be able to actually remove some of that plastic fantastic and artificial turf and add something natural in.
But I mean, it sounds like it really has to be a long-term vision.
Yes, it does eventually, for you to get the best that you can have for your children, but it can happen fairly quickly because tubs of plants can be brought in overnight and be there within sort of 2 days. You can get pot plants, families share things, they bring in bits and pieces for gardening. You can grow in gumboots, you can grow in buckets, you can grow in just about anything. You could even grow in a cardboard box for quite a while before it fell down. And the other thing is to try and connect with people in the area that will help you. So there are a lot of community gardens around these days, and the members of those would probably come in and help. So the gardening, the recycling is always a good place to start.
It sounds like it obviously helps if that's your sort of natural mindset. If
Yes.
you're natural, if you've been brought up with it, if it's something that you
That's
do in
right.
your own life,
Yes.
it kind of naturally flows into it.
But staff have got different ways of bringing things to the table. So it is very helpful if there's somebody who's passionate and has the drive, even if it's in your committee or your administrative body, or somebody that you can connect with that can come and help your service. But there are ways of being natural. You can have people who really don't like gardening and worm farms but would be happy to sit down with pebbles and wood and timber and do crafty things. But they don't have to do them with bought materials and plastic bits and pieces, or you can do that in recycled and reused materials.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things I hear people say when they're not sure about sustainability is it just seems very hard, that there's a lot of information. It's not always hard to work, it's sometimes hard to work out which way to go. There's a lot of conflicting information about which things are most sustainable.
Yes.
How do you make sense of that? How does someone who doesn't know a lot come to grips with all of that information that's out there?
I think looking for people to help you is one good way. There are groups out there. There are groups in all of the states that are involved in early childhood sustainable networks. I think you need to look for people to help. And if it's all very overwhelming, then ignore most of it and look for the simplest thing to do, and just work on that little bit until you build your courage up, and then go to the next step and gradually work on it. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's not worth it. It's a big job anyway, but don't reinvent the wheel. But you don't have to feel overwhelmed by it. Just take it in little bite sizes, and it's the best.
I mean, with all that you've done here, and as you said, reduce the power and the water consumption by half, and all of the other things, is there more you still want to do? Is it ever finished? Do you ever feel like we've got there, we can stop, or is it something that you keep moving with?
No, I don't think you can really completely be finished, because that's what sustainability is all about. But there are certainly things that we want to do as a service, and we want to grow what we have. Certainly we're looking a lot more at reusing and recycling materials in our artwork and our use of equipment with the children. And the other thing that we're really going to sort of do a lot more expanding into is engaging with the outside environment. Being able to go across to the park over the road here, where we could wander down to the mangroves, or going to the bushlands that are a little bit, not too far away.
So it's really making children feel part of not just the environment here, but the whole
thing.
whole of their local environment.
And it's becoming more aware that children are disconnected with nature in a lot of respects. It is changing around, but last year we had a little fellow that the moment he got to the end of the concrete, he stopped and he could not put his foot on the grass. And he virtually climbed up us every time he stepped off. This year he's running around, up the trees and whatever. But it's been a journey for him and his family, actually, to shift their mindset to thinking outside and nature play as well.
It's actually a good thing. Just a final question. You've been through assessment.
Oh, yes.
For the National Quality Standard.
Yes, we have.
You were rated as exceeding.
Yes, we were.
I think sometimes people are worried about how they might document this kind of thing. How do you show someone that you're doing all of this sustainability when an assessor is maybe only there for a day,
Yes.
and they may not see everything.
That's right.
How
So-
did you find that process?
Well, it wasn't as daunting as people first think. We were fortunate in that we had done an accreditation, so we knew that process before, but that was a couple of years ago. We did our assessment 6 weeks into term. We found out that we were having our assessment just before we came back, so we had very new children. They were only here for 6 weeks, which means that some of them had only been here for, say, 12 days. And so even in that time frame, just by walking through those processes of what we do in our policies, like washing your hands and counting to 10 and drinking your water and, you know, using one paper towel, etc., it was obvious that it wasn't something that was artificial.
Yeah, it wasn't just being put on for the assessment visit.
No, that's right. And so the assessors were very good. We actually had 2 watching because we had 1 in training, so it was a little bit sort of daunting having 2. But they just sat back, and if there was something they didn't know or couldn't see, they'd just ask. We didn't bother documenting with a lot of folders. We did put a lot of information in the office in a big basket for them so they could quickly see it that we were asked. It was more to do with the actual administration side of things.
Yep.
We put that there for them to find. But mainly it was just watching us and seeing us. And they're listening to your language. They're listening to how you talk to the children.